Hello, this is Tamara Evans for the Inspiration Division of Designs and Machine Embroidery. Today I want to show you my quilt embellisher software. When you first bring up the software, if you're connected to the internet, you will see the same inspiration screen that you see with all of our software. Of course, the difference is with my quilt embellisher, you have 5 designs unique to this product. You can click here for software support, click here for your online manual, click here for the latest inspiration update. You also have several options with Pure Inspiration, My Daily Inspiration, which will show you a picture or a thought or an idea, some eye candy to get your inspiration juices flowing. Monthly inspiration webinars, which we offer free to all of our consumers. You can sign up for them here and see what the topics will be. Free monthly projects that we give you every month with our software. Eileen's weekly software inspiration blog. These blogs are very helpful for finding out new little tips and always to notice what your new enhancements are for that month and if there are any to this software platform. And of course, my inspiration resources. This allows you to get onto our forum, which is also free to our users, and the help desk, and lots of other places so you know where to go if you have questions or need answers for a particular product or software. We can just create a new page or close this out since I already have a page open here. You notice I don't have my grid on. I can turn on my grid settings and turn on my grid that easily. I've set this up so that it is in inches. If I need to switch to metric, it's just that quick. My grid settings stay the same. I had these set for 1/2 inch, so that doesn't change. But if I have to flip back and forth real quick, oh, I don't know, to see if a design fits well in a hoop or measure something in metric, I can do that. I can leave it in metric all the time, but I personally prefer inches. Okay, so let's talk about what's unique with this software. First of all, the, these icons right along here are the most unique things with this software. Like my block piecer, it does have a block library and it does have fabrics, the same fabrics that you get with my block piecer. In fact, it is the same library. All the fabrics go into a common library. So if you're adding your own fabrics, you only have to do it once. And then we have stitches. You'll notice if you hover over an icon, it tells you exactly what that icon does. So you never get lost wandering around the page. Now, let's get started. If you had watched the uh, demonstration for my block piecer, you'll recall that we created a block in there called Nested. And oh, here it is in my block library. I'm just going to pull that up right here in my quilt embellisher and decorate the same block. Now, the reason I want to pull it up from there if I'm going to decorate it instead of bringing in a new one from the block library up here in the top left-hand corner is that I've already sized this one. I may have even assigned fabric to it and all kinds of things like that. So you'll see here, this is the same 6.25-inch block we created in the block piecer demonstration. So I know that whatever I put on this block is going to fit perfectly. We always want to decorate our blocks to the true size that they are. That way we won't have any doubt when we go to stitch it out onto the block, with the batting and backing together that everything is going to fit. Let me show you how we can take a simple block like this that's artwork. As you can see, it's just, let me ungroup it since I pulled it in from the library. I can take an individual patch and move it to the side. You see it's artwork. It's sitting on top of our screen. I'm going to move that back, but select everything and I just want to center it. For those of you who will be bothered that that wasn't centered on my screen, now you can pay attention to what we're doing with the decorating. First thing I want to do is come over here and change my sequence from the library back to the sequence view. This way I can easily select the pink color, which is kind of a light color. Let's make that a little bit darker. I could just switch it to one of these colors here or click on it and change it. Oh, let's make it a darker color, honeysuckle. That's lovely. Okay, this will just help you see it better as we switch it to different stitches. The other thing I'm going to do is turn off my grid. That's because as we turn these to stitches, I don't want to see the lines in the background that might disrupt and interfere with the way my stitches look. Okay, so first off, let's select the honeysuckle color. And up here at the top, here are our different convert to options. Okay, so the first thing I can convert to are texture stitches. Now there are many different options within the texture stitches, and for those of you who are familiar with Perfect Embroidery Pro or PEP as we commonly refer to it, you will notice that these are the same as the motif stitches in PEP. So we're going to make a motif fill, if you will. So I'll select a stitch, and it fills that in with the stitch. If I look over here to the right to my properties box right here, I can see that my pattern length is 10 millimeters. Well, while it's true, I don't think in millimeters. I know what's 10 is too small, and if I make it 20, it'll be twice as big. So I can just apply that change. And I think I like that look a little bit better. I could select other stitches, or we can move on to stippling. If I want to make the stippling, the default that comes up is called maze. Now this one is different. It doesn't have pattern length. It has stitch length, which is 3.5 millimeters, and density. Don't let the D word scare you. It's just the distance between those rows of stitches. So if I want them further apart, I could change it to 8 and apply. And now my stitching is a little bit further apart. Very easy. But we also have two other methods of stippling. One is called piano. I really like this one because it goes back and forth just kind of in a directional way, horizontally. And if I wanted to make this micro stippling, I could make it very small. I might change my stitch length to 2 and my density to 2 and make it like micro stippling. So it becomes very small. It really compacts that quilt sandwich and really helps to make whatever I've got on those blue patches pop. So that would be micro stippling. I also have another type, and any of the stippling types, you can do micro stippling or you can do large meandering stippling. The third type is called Hilbert. And this is what we generally think of as standard stipple. It's just kind of an all-over meandering design, and here you see it in micro stippling. But if you were going to stitch a baby quilt for someone who's not a real close friend or relative, you might want to make that stitch length of 4 and your density of, oh, I don't know, 25. And it's still going to get quilted. It's just not going to take you near as long to do it. So that's the stippling. Another option that we have up here in the top left-hand corner is advanced stippling. When I click on that, this has 294 unique options to fill in this area with some type of patterned stipple. Okay, so let's try this one. I don't think I've done that one yet. Number 17. Well, and I think that's just a little close together for what I want to do quilting wise. But if I was going to do that on plain fabric for a pocket or a pillow, that might just be lovely. Let's change that pattern length to 25 and see what that looks like. Oh, that is quite lovely. Now I could even make that 50. We do not have a limit on the pattern length. It automatically recalculates our stitch length for us, okay, so that it makes the pattern the right size and it'll adjust the stitch length accordingly. So that's one option. Let's see, what's another one here? Maybe something a little more directional. How about scrolling down? Lots and lots of options. Oh, let's try this. I don't think I've done this one either. Oh, that's kind of I may have done that one. It's very lovely, kind of a crosshatch with a little flare to it. Again, we can adjust the pattern length to make it the size we want it to be. The other thing we can adjust with this is, let's make that a little smaller. See, I just keep playing until I get it exactly the way I want it. We can also change the direction that this goes. This is very rigid up and down, but perhaps I want it to go more angular like the triangle. All I do is I move my angle line after I click on my reshape tool, right click, and there you go. My angle line is changed. So now we have matching angle lines on there. Let's move on to the blue patches. If I select those, I could do a contour fill that just follows the shape of the patch, or I could do a shape echo. This is really one of my favorites because it lets me do a lot of really fun stuff. For example, if I want to make these circular, I'll pick this circle and wow, that's a lot of movement. Let's look at it in 3D and see how that looks. That's still a lot of circles. So perhaps I want to make them uh, a larger density. We'll go with 10 instead of 5. That's still not exactly what I want. I think what I would really like is for all 3 of these to be treated as one circle. It's very simple. I just select them all 3 and click up here on my Combine tool. It treats it as one circle. Now, if I'm doing 4 of these blocks and we're putting them together where the blue triangles are, then I'm going to want to move the center of that circle to the other side of, or to the corner, the top right-hand corner. And to do that, I just click on my Shape tool and come down. When my cursor has a little pink dot after it, that means I picked up the pink dot and I can easily move the center of my design up here, and there you go. When I stitch those together, they will all stitch the circle in exactly the same places, and they'll match up and it'll look like a circle going through all 4 blocks, even though I'm not quilting them at the same time. Isn't that fun? Now, that's just one way to decorate a block. Let's look at some other options. Let me open up a new page up here in the top left-hand corner. Now you'll notice my first design is still available there, so I can switch back and forth with ease. If I'm working on a larger project that requires multiple design pages to get it done, on this one I have a blank screen. I'm going to bring up a block that's a backdrop. Now my backdrop may be something like the star. I'm going to select it. It could be a photograph. It could be something I've scanned. If I photographed it, it would look like this because it would be crooked. And there's extra white space because I didn't clean up the image before I brought it in. But we can fix that right here in the software. Just by coming up back over to our backdrop tool on the left-hand side, clicking the arrow underneath it, and selecting Define Horizon. All that does is it defines a straight line, such as the line right across here. It straightens it up for me. I could have done from point to point on the star or something different, but that defines it. Now, what I need to do at this point is to define the size. If I look over here at my backdrop, it says it's just slightly over 9 inches square. However, that includes this white space. So let's define the scale of what we're decorating because that's the important part. And I would actually measure this block, and I might measure it multiple ways. I could measure it from here to here and say that is 6 inches. Or I could measure it, here we'll scroll back in a little bit on our screen. There we go. Or I could measure it from corner to corner and scale it that way. I might do multiple measurements just to make sure I have something that fits in there nicely. Now that I have my backdrop established, we can add designs on top of this. And for that, I can come up here to my embellishments. In my embellishments, I have 50 different sets of designs. I have these beautiful Celtic designs. I have circles, I have cross petals. Elegant is one of my favorites. Let's select this element from the elegance. Now you'll notice each one of these are designed, or each theme has 4 elements. One that's designed to fit in a square. This one's actually on point. A circle, a rectangle, and a triangle. And they work well together, so you can use multiple designs of the same theme in one quilt. Now that's nice. And when it comes in, let's look at it in 3D so it's a little easier to see. What you have here is the stitch design, and around it, if you look closely, there's another element. That is artwork. For right now, I'm going to delete that outline because we're going to do our own artwork outline, and I'll show you how that works. So not only can you do this with the designs that come in the embellishments because they come with an artwork outline, but you can take any design you own and bring it in and do that create an outline yourself. Let me show you how that's done. The first thing I want to do is get this lined up so that it's where I want it to be and that it's got, it fills out the space nicely. Now remember, size is important in this because we want it to be the exact size of our block and fit in the space very nicely. I think that does it very well. So here's my design. Now that I have it sized, I'm going to select it and right click and say create an outline. Now I want my outline a little bit further out from the center there. So I'm going to say let's put it 0.15 inches from the outside of the design and see where that puts it. Yeah, I think I kind of like that. That'll work well for what I want to do. So now I have my design that's in the center, and then I have my artwork outline. The next thing I want to do, if I'm going to, say, stipple the rest of the blue background or put some other all over design in that, all I need to do is select my artwork. I'm going to select a rectangle. And for our purposes, so you can see really what I'm doing, I'm going to have it filled rather than just an open, unfilled rectangle. And if I right click on the yellow, I can change the color to yellow, and we will just draw a square the same size as our block. Okay, now I'd probably measure this a little more specifically. And with that artwork square done, I'm going to move it to the back, which moves it behind the artwork outline and the design. Now, to cut a hole where this design is going to be stitched, I simply have to select the 2 artwork elements, the outline and the backdrop, and combine them. And there you go. We've just cut a hole in the background. Now I can take and change this background to stipple if I'd like, and stipple the rest of it. Now, it would probably do that in blue, so it fades to the back, but I wanted you to be able to see the contrast there. So here we have our design in the center, and then we have our stipple in the background. If I wanted to, I could even go in, select the stipple, and change it to an element, a shape echo, that reflects the center of that star. This is fun. And click OK. Oh, now it made those very close together, so I'm going to change the density to say, oh, I don't know, like a 15 maybe, and apply. And now you kind of get a cool echo coming out from that. If we look at it in 3D, we get a better effect. And I really like that it highlights the contrast between the 2 blues in the background. So now here's the trick to stitching this. What I need to do is to make sure that this design lands exactly in the middle of this star, and then the rest of it will flow as long as I have my sequence right. The way I'm going to do that is to do placement marks. I want to add placement marks at the 4 points of that star. Okay, so I just did that by selecting these 4 points. I could also put it at the corners, however you choose to do it, and the block will determine that, and click OK. Now, we can't really see them because we have the backdrop up there. So let's get rid of the backdrop. And if we look over here in our sequence view, you'll see the first thing that we have stitching are our placement marks. Then it's our backdrop, which I'm going to move to the end because I want my center star to stitch out second, and then my backdrop. Okay, so if I turn off the other two elements, what happens is I will hoop stabilizer and stitch this. Then I will remove my stabilizer from the hoop and use my PAL lamp to line up my crosshairs so that it matches exactly where these go. Then if I put a little spray adhesive on there, I can lay my star down so that the points match up exactly with the crosshairs on my PAL lamp because I won't be able to see them once I put the fabric on top of it. Then put it back on my machine, float my batting and backing underneath, stitch my center design and my end design, and you will never see the placement marks because they were only stitched on the batting. How fun is that? It's simple, easy, and it comes out just perfect. Okay, let's try something else. How many of you love to do applique? I do. Not only does it have a higher perceived value if you're in business selling embroidery, it has a higher perceived value than regular stitching, but it also gives you the excuse to buy more fabric, as if we needed one, right? All right, so let me pull up an applique design here. This is one I like to use. And I'll open that up. And again, this is just a backdrop. Okay, it's a picture. If I bring up my grid, you'll see that it's underneath my design table. So it's kind of like a shadow box type thing. So I'm going to trace it. Now, the way I trace it, I select my artwork tool, and none of these are, well, the circles may be exact circles, but I could just start off clicking around here and tracing the outline and using my control key to make curves and all of that. But the easiest way to do it is with the magic wand. So if I select the magic wand, we still have it filled from before. So let's just pick a color. I'm going to select this brown color and click on it on the shaded area on my backdrop, and it drew it all for me. How easy is that? Then I will select the red color and click, 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 click there. Let's do the blue. They look like berries to me. Do those, and then the yellow. Now, I could change color on this. I could certainly audition fabrics. And now at this point, I would save the artwork because I can do a couple of things with it. I could print it as a template on an applique paper that I could fuse to the back of my fabric and cut out and stick down as I'm doing my machine applique. I could also export it as artwork to a format such as FCM or SVG or a plotter file or a DXF that could be read by a cutting machine such as the Scan and Cut or the Silhouette, and it would cut out my applique shapes for me. Wouldn't that be awesome? Not only does it make your applique a little bit more accurate, it certainly speeds up the time and risk of error in doing it that way because you're not taking your hoop off the machine and cutting during the process. At this point, I have my artwork finished. All I have to do with it still selected like it is here is click on my Convert to Applique icon, and it will convert every one of these pieces of artwork to an applique. That includes a placement line, which is the exact outline of this artwork, a tack down line, and a finishing stitch, which the default is a satin stitch. Now, of course, you can modify those settings numerous ways and change the color of the placement line, change the inset, all of those things. But with the default right here, we'll see here's our satin stitch outlines. We can change the size, of course, and all of it is done that simply and that accurately. Perhaps I want to change the satin stitch on the brown part of my applique to a blanket stitch, which is called an E-stitch. It's very simple to do. I just change the stitch and click apply. Now I have a blanket stitch, but let me show you something that makes the applique process in this just foolproof. It's perfect. Let's select this part of the applique and audition some fabric in it. I'll select my fabric library, and for our purposes, let's just do a light color so we can see the thread and the contrast. Click OK. And here's our color. If we zoom in, you can see that the blanket stitch is not really taking a big enough bite, if you will, of the fabric. So let's adjust it. Because it's set up for the defaults on the satin stitch, I'm going to change the inset from 50%, which is perfect for satin, to 95%, which is much better for a blanket stitch because it snugs up to the edge of the fabric without going over the top of it. Now there we go. Isn't that perfect? I can certainly change my stitch length if I want to, break it apart and change this tack down stitch right here to match my fabric if I want to have a contrasting blanket stitch around that. Lots of different options I can do with it, including changing stitches to motif or crazy quilting stitches. So let's move on to the next thing that we can do with our software. Oftentimes we will buy patterns, or we'll see in a magazine or a book that we own a great quilting motif that we don't have a design already made for. It's very easy to create them. I'm going to use my backdrop tool again over here on the left hand side and select an image. Now I have a fairly simple one down here. Let's do, where'd she go? Let's do these leaves. Okay, when I open it up, I have the option of resizing it at this point. So I can make this 6 inches if I want to, or 8 or 10, however big I want to make it. And you'll notice it's just a solid line drawing, although it's pixelated. That's okay. It's not one of the dashed lines. If you have an image that's like that or a picture, just trace over it and then scan it and bring it into your computer as a backdrop or take a photograph of it, either one. Now, to digitize this, and all I mean by that is create a run stitch on it, I'm going to come up here and select my run stitch and then select my magic wand. Just like with the applique, I could have, whoops, I didn't click it. I could have traced around this, but that's not really fun for me and I want to get this job done. So all I need to do is hold down the shift key to change my magic wand to red. Think of red for red work, and then just click anywhere on that black outline. And in no time, I'm dismissing the backdrop and I have a run stitch quilt motif. Now if I want to change that to a bean stitch or a 2-ply stitch or even a motif or crazy quilting stitch, I can do that in a snap and make it look exactly the way I want it to look. How simple is that? Another option that we have is crazy quilting. Let me click on to open a new file. And again, I'm going to bring up a backdrop of a crazy quilting block. And here is one that I have created with some batik fabrics. Now there's 2 ways for us to do crazy quilting. One of them is to create a run stitch. And to draw a run stitch, I simply have to click and click on the other end because this is a straight line. Right click to say I'm done. And I have created this run stitch. Let's look at it in 3D so you can see it a little bit better. Then come over to my properties, select, again, I could make it 2-ply bean motif or crazy quilting, and click on the 3 dots next to it to show the menu of all my different stitches. And let's pick, we do have 50 unique crazy quilting stitches that are authentic. These are real stitches that live out there on crazy quilts and historically accurate. Let me select stitch number 36. I like this one. I'm going to change the stitch length, which is really the pattern length. Let's make it about a 10 because I want to be able to see it, and click apply. Now that's really kind of small, so let's change it to 25. We can play with it until we get it exactly the way we want. And you'll notice each one of these stitches are laid down precisely along that line, and they're all the same size. It's figured out what size to make them fit evenly in there and all be the same exact size. That is one way, by converting a run stitch to crazy quilting, that we can lay down a row of crazy quilting stitches. The other way is a little bit different. It's more like one would do it by hand. I come up here to the top where my crazy quilting icon is and select the select menu. It brings up the same stitches that we just saw. And I'm going to pick the same stitch, 36. I really like this one. It's like kind of a herringbone look. Now, instead of converting a line, I'm going to click and drag. So I can make this really large or really small. And as the people who used to do or who do hand quilting by hand, these are not all going to necessarily be the same size. Although that's the goal, we're going to make this look a little bit more organic, if you will, imperfect, just like it would have if it had been quilted by hand. Oops, let's undo that one. That's easy enough. I just click Control Z, then or my undo button, and then lay that last stitch down. And there you go. I have a row of crazy quilting stitches done a little differently. So it's entirely up to you and your taste which way you do that. A couple of other things that are popular on crazy quilts are lettering. Now, in our software here, we have built in 50 unique fonts that are wonderful for lots of things. We have the shadow font, which is a beautiful monogram font, so is Mono 20 and Princeton. There's a lot of different fonts, some like the Arial Central Run. It's a smaller run stitch font, which is wonderful for typing a message on a quilt label, creating that and actually stitching it out instead of writing it with a permanent ink pen. Lots of different options for you to label things, to put initials on. Could you monogram a robe with one of these? Absolutely you could. You're not limited to just quilting with the software. All right, so lots of 50 different options, and you have all of the capabilities with these 50 fonts that you do of all of our fonts in the PEP. So you've got full font capability, keyboard fonts, and put them in a circle, resize them, and they scale beautifully. Another option I'll show you quickly is the border option. Now, here are 100 unique borders built into the software, unique to this module, that allow you to create quilt labels. You could also create a frame on a block, a frame around a monogram, put a frame on a pillow with a picture in it or a monogram in it. Lots and lots of different options you can do with these 100 very scalable border designs. So those are some other options. We also include something we call flourishes or decor. These flourish designs there are 50 of them, are just a nice little touch to add just a nice little accent anywhere you would like, on a quilt label, on a quilt block, on a handkerchief, on a pillow, on napkins, whatever you would like to put it on. And again, they are very scalable. And of course, you can recolor them any way you want to and combine them in multiple ways. So just some of the added features that we've included with My Quilt Embellisher to make your quilting life a little easier. What about thinking outside of the block? How would we decorate an entire quilt? Well, first off, we would want to audition all of our designs. Let's open up a new file here. And I happen to have a quilt saved. You can build them in the software by adding blocks together and that type of thing. Or you can take a picture of a quilt. You can or a pattern and bring it in. In this case, here's an Irish chain that is 72 by 92 inches, and it's just a JPEG. So let's open that as our backdrop. Now, when I look at my size over here, it's 8 inches wide. Well, that's not going to work for designing our quilt motif placement for it. So let's change that to 72 inches, and our height adjusts accordingly, so it's right at 92. And now, because I've got a very large design area on my screen, I know this will be designed to scale, even though I'm not working with the actual size block. Here we can start auditioning designs. I could take designs from my embellishments up at the top, or I can go to my library where I happen to have a lot of quilt motifs saved because I've collected them over the years, and pick some different designs. Let's see, I think I have, let's try this one and see what it looks like. I'll move it in, and let's rotate that a little bit. I can use my tool there, or I could use my rotate tools at the top, resize it, audition. And this one I'm looking at isn't exactly square, so I'm not sure I like that. Let's get rid of it and find another one that will fit in that area nicely. Oh, I think this might be one. Pull it in. Again, I want to rotate it. I can use my tool up here at the top to rotate it to the left and resize. And I can measure it and size it out precisely, or I can eyeball it on here because I know at some point I'll print out a template and double check it with the actual size of the quilt. And I kind of like just about where that is right there. So I'm going up into the corners a little bit, but not too far. So I could try that. I could also select other designs or repeat that design across the quilt. Maybe select a different type of design that I think might look better in here. Oh, let's see what this does. Take that right there and resize it out. Center it back in the corner. I might like this one better, or I might like a combination. And design the whole quilt and see what they look like before I ever take a stitch. Then I would save it in sections, embroiderable sections. If I'm saving something for a long arm quilting machine that has the robotics, I could save a whole section going across here. Then I would take the individual designs, such as this one, and copy it, put it on a new page. Let's create a new page, paste it, and save it. Print a template on our print and stick template paper. Trim that out, and that will also give me a crosshair on that paper so I can see exactly where I want to land the center of that block. I'll stick it directly to the quilt. I like to quilt with my Monster Snap Hoop and Short E. It makes it very simple to support the weight of the quilt and move along using my Monster Snap Hoop as I go, and my quilting is done in no time. Thank you for your attention, and we look forward to bringing you more inspiration in the near future.